All right, Tanya will log on whenever, so I guess we shall start. So basically, this unit, and I mentioned last time that we know that a new unit is starting because we already have a verbal cue, the tone shift, right, of the text. Like the previous unit, which ends in Perek Tet Pasuk Tet, right? It just has a completely different, like, tone. And all of a sudden it's like, oh, we suddenly enter like a very political, historical, factual tone instead of it being more prose, right? So basically, the way we know it kind of ends in Perek Yud, like at the end of Perek Yud, is once again, if we just listen to the tone, where basically the Malkat Sheva unit and the whole political unit seems to have a cohesive tone to it, and then the tone that opens Perek Yud Aleph, right? V'amelech Shlomo ahav nashim nochuyot. That just sounds completely different. Like you're changing topics on us. It's no longer political exclusively. Now you're entering more of an emotional type of theme, which again is going to be the theme for basically the entire Perek. Okay, now a bunch of people admit all. Yay, awesome. Okay, so basically, is there a common denominator among all the different historical, factual, political stories that are recorded in, this unit? Because someone actually wrote in that question saying, wow, it's just listing a whole bunch of political connections that Shlomo established. Like, what's the deal? Like, is this supposed to mean something to us? And so that's actually one of the challenges of learning any book of Tanach, and this is what I did my thesis for my master's in Tanach on, was how if you don't know the historical context, historical, cultural, theological context of the Tanach, then at best I could say that the stories don't make sense or we don't understand them. The worst thing I could say is that they sound stupid. And I gave as my sample, I used Sefer Shmot and I used the 10 plagues, the Seret HaMakot, because truly, when people read the 10 plagues, it can sound arbitrary at best, or it could sound ludicrous at worst. I remember reading an academic paper, and I think I mentioned this already, where one of the suggestions for explaining why was, let's say, the plague of frogs, or one of the other plagues, why was such a preposterous kind of sounding plague, they explained it as it was, the Bible's attempt at mocking Pharaoh, saying, yes, even, and like they read the whole thing because it sounded ludicrous to them. They read the whole thing as deliberate comedy. Now, again, that's not to say that there isn't comedy in the Tanakh. There most certainly is. But that was another academic paper that I read that critiqued that commentary, saying, we think you're ascribing comedy to a place where it's not meant to be. And this other scholar, Professor Sasson, was like, I think you're barking up the wrong tree. I don't think it's deliberately comedic. But if you are familiar with the Egyptian pantheon, and you're familiar with mythology and what frogs represented in ancient Egypt, then you understand exactly why frogs followed blood. Yes, it was a much more intense and dangerous, like more terrifying makkah for them, plague, than Makkah's dam, which if you notice, Makkah's dam, Paro didn't flinch. He never called for Moshe and Aaron saying, quick, bring them. We're dying. We can't help it. Okay, I'll let the people go. He stays quiet for a whole week. He doesn't say anything. The plague ends and la, la, la. After 3 days of the plague of frogs, and they're not even like poison arrow dart frogs. It's not like they're like rainforest, like poisonous frogs that are killing people. They're like Kermit, like ribbit, like really? 3 days of that, and he's screaming, bring me Moshe and Aaron immediately. I will do whatever he wants, just take it away. So again, if you're reading it out of context, it's just like, this is so random, or worse, this is dumb. And that's a very dangerous place to go, where Dvar Hashem, the word of God, is dumb, but it's such a logical conclusion if you don't have a frame of reference. So Sefer Melachim, especially our unit, is incredibly challenging because we do not...
You're not going to tell us the context?
What context?
Of the frogs.
Nope, but I'll be more than happy to send it to you in Hebrew. I mean, the process of actually translating into English, because some people have asked me to translate my thesis into English, In fact, even the professor who was my mentor, he was like, you need to translate this, expand it, and you have to publish this as a book. He's like, this needs to be like a book. Because I did only 3 of the plagues for the thesis because there was like a word limit. And he was like, if you do the rest of the plagues, he was like, sign me up, I would buy a copy. He's like, this Chiddush, you could do a doctorate on this. He's like, this is incredible.
Yeah,
anyway.
I'll buy the book too. Pre-order.
Anyway, so the kids are, yeah, no, that because just chaval, it would like eat up the entire class and then some to like explain that. But actually, when I taught in my own yeshiva too, that was the unit where we literally did my thesis as yeshiva 2 chumash, like in-depth chumash. We just went through it. Anyway,
but please send it later.
So back to our topic at hand. It's so frustrating reading this unit because the countries of Tzor, right, Tyre, tells us very little. Hiram tells us very little. Some of the materials, the Queen of Sheba tells us nothing. We don't even know where this place is. And so reading this chapter just leaves us like, what am I supposed to get out of this? And these were questions I actually got, which were excellent questions. Like, why is this even mentioned? I mean, one person asked, like, is this mentioned to show that Shlomo is becoming materialistic? Because it's mentioning gold and just so many random things. Like, what is this hyperlink to? So this is definitely part of the challenge that I urge everybody that don't just like sort of fling your hands up in there and say, okay, forget this, we just don't know. And you will find that was one of the frustrating things about, let's say, doing the unit on the Queen of Sheba, Malkat Shva, is because we know so little about her, partially because the country as an important political figure in the Middle East did not last very long. From what I researched, they only lasted about 200-300 years. And then they were conquered by another nation, and so they just basically disappeared. So they didn't leave much in writing. It's not like they left us palaces or pyramids, or they didn't leave anything, so we have really nothing to hold on to. Bichlal, if you open up the Midrashic world, you will just be flabbergasted because our sages have a field day with her and you have no idea what they're based on. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people are familiar with the whole innuendo there between her and Shlomo, specifically because of the B'nai, what's it called? Not the B'nai Menashe, the Ethiopian Jews, not the Falashmora, but the ones who were in Operation Moshe, that the Ethiopian Jewry, they have an ancient tradition that they are the offspring of the Queen of Sheba and Shlomo. And it's not so clear if that's even possible, given that we'll discover that Sheba wasn't in Africa. It was in modern day Yemen, like somewhere between Yemen and the very southern part of Saudi Arabia. So the point is, we don't have much to go on the Midrashim. We don't know what necessarily they're based on, although I did read some interesting speculations. But we just don't have enough to really flesh out the story and it's such a rich story. It's like so crazy. Like so many people wrote in the question, she's coming to him with riddles, which just open parentheses, that in and of itself is an interesting thing. Like, what's the deal with riddles? And it's not the first time we're going to encounter it, right? Shlomo's claim to fame, he's so brilliant that he's able to answer riddles. He's able to interpret metaphors, right? Mishalim. And this is something that has lost value in our modern minds. We don't understand, like riddles, we're just like, okay, it makes a good meme. Like, what is a riddle? But if we understood the cultural context of a riddle, we understand that it was a very powerful thing. Anyone familiar with any Greek mythology? And I brought this up like, no, it was a different class. Anyone know like where riddles from a Greek perspective, where we see riddles being like a very powerful tool or powerful entity, like in the mythology? Oh, thank you, Sarah Plutkin. Excellent. The Sphinx. Exactly. That half. What do you mean that half? Oh, half lion, half woman. And according to some, she also had the wings of an eagle, which, FYI, that's simply a fancy schmancy like way to say a griffin, if anybody's familiar with ancient mythological creatures. And I'm just going to throw this out here. This is totally my randomness, so take it with 5 kilos of salt. But a griffin, right, which is the body of a lion, the head of a human, I think, and different permutations, right, of like eagle, lion, and human. So that's incredibly similar to some of our traditions on the kruvim. And the root for kruvim and griffin is almost identical. Just food for thought. Anyway, Because again, there's like, the Kruvim wasn't clear if they had like what kind of body. We know they had wings. Argument whether they had the face of a human or the face of a calf. That's a machlokus in the Gemara. And I've seen an opinion where there's also a lion entity, which again, all of this imagery parallels the Merkava vision of Yecheskel in chapter 1 of Sefer Yecheskel, where he describes the angels, bearing the godly chariot, that the angels have 4 faces, human in the front, lion on the left. Oh, I always get this wrong. The point is, one is a lion, one is a bull, and the back is an eagle or a vulture, and it has wings. And anyway, so obviously it's all metaphorical, right? But the point is that certain images are really embedded in the human psyche, and we see different manifestations, right? The Kedusha in Sefer Yecheskel, the Klipa in the pagan religions. Anyway, that's just as an aside. So basically, with the Queen of Sheba, there isn't, right, I want to say the Sphinx, right? So the Sphinx, so what is her power? That she asks a riddle, and if you can't solve the riddle, then she has permission to like devour you, right? So even the heroes, like they weren't necessarily powerful because of brute strength, but they were powerful because they're able or not able to solve the Sphinx's riddle. So that's exactly where I was going with that in many cultures, right, we see that this concept of riddle isn't just like brain teasers, it holds some kind of power. So we'll see if we can kind of, piece things together today. But that's the biggest challenge in Melachim, is so many things have been lost. Just simply lost to time, space. They just have not survived. Now, the beautiful thing about archaeology is that it's such a great vehicle for Hashgacha Pratis, that Hashem keeps things hidden as long as he needs it hidden. And as soon as he needs to reveal it, that's exactly what happens. So many things, like for literally centuries, if not millennium and a half, like biblical, wait just one second, Devorah, what connection between Sphinx and riddles? Because the Sphinx, it's not like she was this powerful creature that could just randomly like devour people. Basically, in order to pass through, Sarah Plotkin, do you recall the full story? Who is it? Was it Odysseus? Who needs to pass by? And basically, in order to pass by to obtain some kind of important thing, you have to pass by the Sphinx. How do you pass by the Sphinx? She asks you a riddle. If you're able to answer the riddle correctly, then she lets you pass. And she's powerless. And she's like a demigod. She's like, she's not just a creature, like a monster or something. She's a demigod. And what is her power? You answer her riddle, right? But if you are
Isn't
not
it
able
like
to answer her
he's
riddle,
rescuing somebody from the dead?
Whoa, what?
Isn't he rescuing someone from the dead or something like that?
So I'm going to have to look it up afterwards because my Greek mythology is really rusty, even though it used to be awesome. But yeah, I got to look it up because again, there are multiple people that could be relevant for. So it could be for Orpheus, because Orpheus needed to bring his wife back from the dead. But also, I don't remember it being about Orpheus, so because I think he only dealt with Hades. But I'll have to look it up. But either way, with the Sphinx, so she literally had the right to devour you, and even the strongest people could not pass by her if they couldn't answer her riddle, which is such a perplexing thing. Like, dude, take out your sword and slash her. I don't know. Like, what do you mean you can't answer her riddle? Just as an extra brain teaser, anyone know what her famous riddle was?
Who walks on 4 legs when they're born, 2 legs when they're growing, and 3 legs when they're
I don't
old?
even think she mentions born. She says, no, the way it goes is who walks on 4 in the morning, walks on 2 in the afternoon, and walks on 3 in the evening. She's talking about morning, afternoon, and night of a person's life. The morning of your life is infancy and childhood. The afternoon is youth. And then the evening of your life is old age. And so again, you crawl as a baby on 4. As a youth, you walk on 2. And as an old person, you walk on 3, where it's 2 plus a cane. So that was the correct answer to the Sphinx's riddle. The interesting thing is that we actually hear this riddle echoed in the very last chapter of Sefer Kohelet. Food for thought, especially interesting since you guys have heard of Homer, right? Not Simpson, okay? Homer, the ancient Greek classic author, right? Who wrote the Odyssey and the Iliad, right? So I don't know if anyone had to read it like mandatory reading in high school or in college, but either way, anyone know when Homer lived? So I'm going to leave that to you guys to Google. You guys, I will be very surprised if no one is shocked when you look at which biblical character Homer was a contemporary of. Homer lived in the time of the Tanach, and I'm not even talking like late Tanach, like, early Second Temple. I'm talking one of our most beloved biblical characters was a contemporary of Homer. So at the same time as this character is doing what he's doing in Tanakh, Homer's sitting in Greece writing the Odyssey and the Iliad. And that really makes us go, when you guys get the answer, you'll be like, holy crap, no way. I was wondering, is anybody here in the Chumash class in Yeshiva too? And it's like, Sapir, thank you. Thank you, Sapir, I appreciate it. Okay, so that's the connection between the Sphinx and Shlomo, is that riddles are an icon in ancient cultures. It's not just entertainment. It holds some kind of magical power, like true power to rule over somebody. So the thing, what I was saying before about archaeology is that, biblical archaeology was a non-entity for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. Like if you were at Harvard or Oxford 200 years ago, 200 and like, whatever. Yeah, let's say 200 years ago. And you would have said to a colleague, yes, I'd like to go dig for David's palace, or I want to dig for some kind of, I want to like do biblical archaeology. They would look at you like, oh yeah, maybe you're going to dig for Cinderella's glass slipper also? Like, are you insane? Like, should we call Bellevue now? Like, what's wrong with you? What are you going to do, dig for Red Riding Hood's cape? Like, what is wrong with you? And then at the right time, when Hashem decided now is the time for this to become a thing and for these things to be revealed, he allowed biblical artifacts or archaeological artifacts corroborating the biblical stories to surface. Now, there's two reasons for that. I mean, b'derech hateva, right, in the way of nature, right, the natural explanation. One, the reason artifacts had not been uncovered is people simply didn't dig deeply enough, right? Because we know that the earth, like the deeper down you go, the earlier you are in the timeline of, human history. So they had only dug in the lower levels. They simply hadn't reached the biblical era layer of earth. So by the 1800s, they'd been digging for so long, they finally hit the equivalent of the biblical era. And then on another level, also, they just simply, one second, sorry, I didn't read it yet, but basically on another level, they also just, technology very much was lacking to allow us to do the proper archaeological digging. So there was this tandem process of hitting the right layer and having the technology to unearth the artifacts. And basically, archaeologists that had held a certain view for so long had a baseball bat taken to their entire way of thinking, where they literally treated the Tanakh as a book of fairy tales. Nobody entertained the idea for a second that there was any historical data in there whatsoever. Nobody thought that maybe there was a Davidic dynasty at some point. And then all of a sudden, artifacts started surfacing, and they could no longer debate it. So now, globally, biblical archaeology is a thing in almost every single campus on the planet, except in Israel, right? Because of course, right? Even Tel Aviv U is fine with it, basically. Or sorry, no, Tel Aviv U is the last bastion. It's like Hebrew U is basically okay with it, but Tel Aviv U is the last man standing, completely saying, no way, it's not possible. People are just seeing what they want to see. The religious Christian archaeologists are seeing what they want to see, and they're finding very creative ways to fudge how, even if an artifact is found, that it says the words Beit David on it, they found a creative way to say, no, that's not what it says. No, because there was never such a thing. So I'm not going to go off on my whole rant about why Tel Aviv U is like clinging so desperately to, this stance of there's no way that biblical archaeology can be legit. And I'm sure you guys think about it for 2 seconds, you can understand by yourselves. Right? Because they're Jews and they have a Yetzer Hara, so they need it to not be true, other than the whole political, like, left-wing agenda, right? Because if this is a Davidic dynasty, then guess what? The Palestinians have no claim, etc. Yes, everything comes down to politics. There's no such thing as like just objectivity. Nobody is intellectually honest, truly. Everybody comes with their biases. And the most intellectually honest thing we can do is honestly just admit it. As long as I approach something, saying, yes, I'm a fundamentalist Orthodox Jew, and therefore this is coloring the way I read things. then I'm not trying to sell you anything. I'm not doing propaganda. Whereas if I'm claiming to be a scientist, I'm claiming to be completely neutral, and I'm still selling you my spin, that's intellectually dishonest. The periodic question, it just disappeared from the chat. What was it?
Oh, it's not a question. I just,
Archaeology and ancient Israel studies. Let me tell you, one of the people that I dislike the most on this planet is one of the big heavy hitters in that department, Professor Finkelstein, who, wow, I hope I never meet him in person. That's all I could say. Because it'll be very hard for me to be diplomatic and polite. Yeah, you read his stuff and you just literally face palm, like, you must have such a big neshama if this is how messed up you are. So, yeah, that's all I could say about Tel Aviv View's Ancient Israel Archaeology Department. Is it's a joke. Because it is so twisted and convoluted. Whatever artifacts are found, even if they're like clear, as in like all the details line up with a certain chapter of the Tanach, Professor Israel Finkelstein will find a way to like, no, really, it's really saying this. And there's no way the Jewish people actually were here, and we ruled here, and there was a temple, and there was a whatever. And it's just like, Lasai, oh God, really? So anyway.
But sometimes it's good to be like super critical so that when it is proven definitively, everyone can believe it. It's not just like, oh, the Jewish agenda. It's like, no, we followed the scientific protocol. We're very critical.
You literally have like, you know, the biggest archaeologists on the planet. Some of them are religious Christians, some of them are atheists, but like they will just say straight up, this works. Like the name of the king of Judah and the name of the king of Moab that appears in chapter 4 of Melachim Bet, we found a giant stone tablet that, see, carbon dating, right? Carbon dating, it's legit. It's not a forgery. It's not anything. It is legit. It was found in the right area, and the names line up. So we now know that chapter 4 of Melachim Bet historically happened. And we know that King Amaziah actually lived, and there was a king, Mesha, there was a Moabite nation, because we just have an artifact that literally echoes the entire chapter. If you enter the Mesha Stele, M-E-S-H-A, Stele, S-T-E-L-E, is a like either a pillar or either a rock pillar or a tablet that is recording some kind of historical event. So the Mesha Stele is literally one of the earliest artifacts that was found that totally proved that there was a Beit David, because it says Amaziah Melech Yehuda mi Beit David, and this like artifact is literally the bane of Professor Finkelstein's existence. So whatever. So yeah, we live in, you know. So with archaeology, it's tremendous hashgacha pratit that things surface exactly when Hashem feels now is the time for this to be revealed. Which on the one hand, I very much pity people that live now, because once upon a time we got reward for believing in the Tanach, believing that Yetzias Mitzrayim happened. Do you understand what happens when these artifacts surface and you now have proof? You can no longer get reward for your emunah, where you're like the nudnik who's saying, no, but I believe. I don't need to understand it. I know if Hashem said so, I know this is true. So
I feel like Hashem's like, you know what? It's fine. Like we'll lower the bar a little bit. Like,
for you guys, agree more. Exactly. But that's like my one comfort for myself is like, okay, I was okay to believe even before, you know, this stuff surfaced. Okay, so we're going to try to piece things together now, you know, whatever we possibly can. Because again, things are always surfacing, and that's the beautiful thing. Like I mentioned last time, you know, in the last class, Professor Eilat Mazar, right? She's somebody that it's just like, she's miraculous, where, you know, people were quoting whether Yeshayahu, the prophet, actually lived, whether Chizkiyahu, a melech, existed. She goes and finds their clay seal. Go argue with that. She found it on location. It was tested for being a forgery. It was legit. And yet the naysayers still, you know, target her and drive her meshuga. And she's like, whatever. You know, you guys are just ridiculous. As I mentioned to Sarah Plutkin when she was asking about her, the thing about Dr. Mazar, I'm not going to go on a tangent, but just interesting, she's a staunch atheist. And when I interviewed her, I grilled her on that. I don't understand you. On the one hand, you believe in the Tanach? She's like, no, I know the Tanach is true. I'm like, no, excuse me, you believe in the Tanach. You can't prove it. She's like, no, look, I look at the evidence. I'm like, so do you believe in Hashem? She's like, no, I'm a complete atheist. And I'm like, how does this work? Anyway, she's fascinating. Oh God, I could have sat with another 2 hours and just like jaw hit floor. Like, how does your brain work? But the thing about her, she really attempts to be objective because she doesn't really have a bias. She just looks at everything scientifically. So when she found, if you an interesting thing to Google is her discovery of the clay seal, what's called a bulla in archaeological terminology, B-U-L-L-A, the Isaiah bulla, where she found a seal that is broken, a quarter of it is broken off, and it says the name Yeshayahu, and it was found in the same area where she found the authentic Chizkiyahu, king of Yehuda seal, except, and it says on the bottom the letters Nun, Bet, Yud, and the last letter is broken off. Now, Dvora, what could the last letter be?
Nun, Bet, Yud?
Yeah, and there's one letter missing. The last letter is missing.
Aleph?
Exactly. Logic. Now, why is it significant that it was found in the same room as Chizkiyahu's bole and all of his cabinet? Because Yeshayahu was Chizkiyahu's father-in-law. And Yeshayahu was Chizkiyahu's father-in-law. Not only that, he was also the main prophet who was his right-hand man in his cabinet, advising him every step of the way. Well, when we get to the Chizkiyahu chapters, in Melachim, and in Divrei Yamim, and in Sefer Yeshayahu, you open it up, they're literally like inseparable. So to find a bulla that says Yeshayahu on top, Nun Bet Yud on the bottom, in the same room where you find it says Chizkiyahu Melech Yehuda, and all the other characters mentioned in Chizkiyahu's context, it's very likely that it says Navi underneath. Now I asked Dr. Mazart, do you think it actually says Navi? And true to form, I cannot say for sure. Is it very probable? Yes. Is it just as probable, that it's not? Yes. And so she just, as close to objectivity as possible.
Like,
but
what other word would it be? Like, what Hebrew
so
word?
you could read up on that when you open up, any website that talks about the Isaiah Bulla, they'll talk about what the other possibilities are. And so she gives full weight to the other possibilities. She goes, you know what? I hear that. I hear the argument. I think if we were to put all the probability, like in a pie chart, Navi would eat up like the largest, area in the pie chart. But she goes, I'm not going to like write off the other opinions because I hear what they're saying. But anyway, so she's just fascinating. Talk about like just how does your brain work? Anyway, okay, I've prattled on enough. Let's see what data we can find to help us understand this story. So one of the questions before I get into it is a lot of you sent in the question, what is the deal with Hiram and Shlomo calling each other Achi, right? Like my brother. Like what is up with that? So can anyone take a guess? Like why are they calling each other brother? And anybody who knows Israeli slang, Sarah was like, oh, is it like, Israeli gangsters? Like, yo, bro, like Achi, and it's like, no, it's not like bro, but who can guess why like two they're not related neither by religion, family, nothing, like Hiram, Gentile king of Tzor, Shlomo calling each other brother? So I wanted to show you guys a little clip. Did anyone ever see the movie Charlie Chaplin's black and white classic, The Great Dictator? Please promise me you guys will make a movie night at some point, make a whole bucket of popcorn, invite as many friends as is okay quarantine-wise, wearing your masks, and watch The Great Dictator together. One of the greatest movies of all time. So I found a clip. Oh no, is it not? Oh, share screen. Here we go. Hold on. Okay. You guys see it? Ah, okay. Hold on. Hold on. Okay. Okay, hold on.
That country belongs to me.
Now do you see
At this
it?
meeting, we shall not discuss the Austerlitz situation. This interview is solely to impress upon him the force of your personality. To make him feel your superiority. Here. This man Napoleon is aggressive, domineering. Before we make our demands, we must put him in his place.
Precisely, but how?
By means of applied psychology. In other words, by making him feel inferior. This can be done in many subtle ways. For instance, at this interview, I have so arranged it that he will always be looking up at you. You looking down at him. At all times, his position will be inferior.
Excellent.
Then again, we shall seat him here, beside your bust, so that if you relax, that will always be glaring at him.
Huh? Oh. Where is he now?
Resting. When he arrives, I have arranged that he shall enter from the far end of the room. Another psychological triumph. He will have the embarrassment of walking the entire length of the floor toward you.
Very good. Yes.
His Excellency, Signor Napoleone, is now leaving his room.
He's coming. He's coming. Quick. Give me a flower. A flower.
Remember, at all times you must be above him, before him. Entering or leaving, you must be first.
Hello, Hinky! Be good, be good! How you feel? Wait a minute. Ah, my brother dictate. You're a nice little man, Hinky. I'm so glad to see you again. And my friend the garbage. Hello. Oh, this is a lovely place. I feel fine. I just had a nice cold shower. And that bathtub, as soon as you get the plumbing fixed, it'll be in a good shape.
Your Excellency, won't you sit down?
Oh, shoot.
You guys see it? No, okay. Hold on. Okay, I stopped the share. You guys didn't see it? Oh, you only heard it? Okay, I'll send you guys the link. Okay, Beseder. All right, we're still figuring out this. Oh, oops. Okay.
No, I saw it at the beginning, but then later I think you clicked on the Zoom tab. So then it
Oh, so that knocked it out?
yeah, because we see what you see basically. So if you click on the other
okay,
thing.
fine.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So basically, but you were able to hear what the advisor was saying. And so the rest of the scene is all the visual tricks that that like Napoleone, as you can understand, was an Italian leader. And if you were, well, you guys saw Charlie Chaplin's character for 1 second, right? So who did he look like? Yes, exactly, Stephanie. He looked like Hitler. Chaplin actually made this movie, I think, in 1941. And he actually regretted making it because he said if he had known what the Holocaust, was going to turn into, he never would have made this movie because he felt like his movie belittled the Holocaust. He said we just didn't know about the extermination that was going on. So he shows the Jewish ghetto and he shows anti-Semitism and how ugly it is. And he mocks it, like he mocks how stupid anti-Semitism is, even though he himself was not Jewish. But he said when he later saw the pictures from Auschwitz and he saw what it actually was, he said he was just embarrassed. And if he could turn back time, he never would have made the great dictator. But he basically makes fun of Hitler for like throughout the whole movie. And that's why it's one of the most brilliant satirical things ever made. It's also a fun movie. Like it's not heavy and it's brilliant on so many levels. So basically he's, there's Hinkel, which is the Hitler character, who's the head of a, country, also a made up country. And Napoleon is obviously Mussolini, right? Mussolini coming to visit Hitler and the whole pissing match that's occurring there. So basically, and the reason I'm kind of beating this to death is that we'll see this achi thing surface between the Jewish kings and the Gentile kings more than once. It's not like this is a local example. We'll see this multiple times, that basically part of what's going on here is it's bling. That if a king wants to show another king that we're equals, that I'm not inferior to you, he's going to allow himself to say brother. And so that's basically psychological warfare. Sarah's like, so it's an arse thing. No, it's not, because when arsim do that, when Israeli punks do that, they do it as a sign of affection. It's not pissing match at all. Achi is literally, yo, bro, right? It's not like, lama miata, who do you think you are? That's not. They have plenty of other words, Sarah, that you and I both know when they want to put someone, you know, in their place and cut them down to size. They don't use achi. They use a bunch of Arabic slang that means yo mama. So whatever. So they don't use achi. But here, so part of what's going on is to show Shlomo's power is saying that they can call each other achi, which is a big deal. We'll see other kings that ostensibly you would think they're smaller, and they audaciously approach a larger empire with the term achi, and then it's just interesting to see what kind of response they get. Where if the other king feels on equal footing, they won't be offended by it, and they'll respond in kind, achi. But then there are times where we'll see the king is like, who do you think you are to call me bro? Nah, you are a schmecky little country. We are a force to be reckoned with. Don't go calling me bro. No. And so we'll see this way because everybody's vying for dominance, right? You have Moab, you have all the little nations, including Israel, that at some point they're little. They're just these little regional, countries, but they branch out. And then at some point they test their, cred by saying achi. So that's what the achi thing is doing there. So basically, there's different kings mentioned. It starts off with Hiram Melech Tzor. Then there's that weird episode with the cities that Shlomo gives him, and Hiram is very diplomatically saying, cringe, they're not so good, I don't like this trade-off. And so there's a whole diplomacy thing at play. Then it's mentioning the three cities of Gezer, Megiddo, Chatzor, and we'll see, I don't know if we'll get to it, but that's also, archaeologically speaking, was one of the big coups for biblical archaeology. If you want to read up on it, Google Yigael Yadin, whose father, Professor Sukenik, actually discovered the Dead Sea Scrolls in 1947. So his son, Yigael Yadin, don't ask me why the father and son don't have the same last name. One is a Chutzlar's name, and Yigael Yadin chose an Israeli name. He didn't like the Sukenik. It sounded too exile, old country-ish. So he discovered biblical Megiddo, yes, Megiddo, Gezer, and Chatzor, and you'll see the interesting thing he discovered that totally proved this chapter of Melachim was also historically factual, which was definitely doubted. So I think I have the link. I did prepare the slide for you, but I don't want to go on the tangent because I want to get to the Queen of Sheba and because that's really the meat of this unit. So basically, then it goes to the history about Paro and those cities. And then it goes on to, the whole bureaucratic infrastructure that Shlomo had to set up as the empire expanded, right? He had to set up Arei Miskenot. What are Arei Miskenot? And we should know this from Sefer Shmot. Storehouses, excellent for grain, for food, exactly. So he needed entire cities for that. I can't remember ever a time when the Jewish people ever needed that. Now, why did he need that? Because he also had to set up Arei Parashim, which is like like the horse, but like soldiers, but that are on horseback. So, and that's why Sarah brought up the stables. He needed entire cities just for stables and for their riders and for different, units in the army. So now why does he need all of this? Because only a country that is a global power needs this kind of bureaucracy. When you have that many people, you know how many people you need to employ to run all of these different entities? Like when you have an army that's expansive, that you need smiths for the shoe horses and for this and for the uniforms of the soldiers and for literally from soup to nuts, everything. And so you need to be able to feed all these people. And then it goes on to describe the 7 nations, the people that Joshua didn't conquer. They also became faithful servants, that we even see them mentioned in Divrei Hayamim and Chronicles, that they still remained loyal to the Davidic dynasty, even after the destruction of the temple. Even in Second Temple era, they saw themselves as proud Judean citizens, proud subject to the Davidic dynasty. So Shlomo isn't just like ruling over them like a dictator. He literally earned their pride and their loyalty. So lest you be thinking that, oh, he just kind of took advantage of them. That's not what's being described at all. Mas Oved, like that they are, the clerks. They're doing it willingly, saying, we are so proud to be part of this powerful, glorious empire. And so that is a huge Kiddush Hashem, that he's expanding, not just politically, financially, he has to sustain this power, and geographically he's expanding, and that's part of what's going on. Where is Tzor, Tyre, in terms of ancient Middle Eastern geography? We know where it is. It's which modern country? Excellent word, Lebanon, exactly. Tzor and Sidon is Lebanon and the southern part of Syria, exactly. And so note that basically the chapter kind of ends with the Queen of Sheba. So why is that the order, right? It goes from Tzor, Sidon, Hiram, then it goes to Megiddo, Gezer, Hatzor, which are all northern cities in the Galil, which again isn't the Golan, it's a little south. And then it moves its way down, and the story basically ends with his tremendous conquest in Eilat and onward, right? So note, to show the expansive empire, it's going from north to south, right? Showing that he didn't just stay there, he expanded. He kept moving east, northeast, and southwest and east. And that's what's being described in the thing with the Queen of Sheba, is that once he was able to establish ties with her, and we'll understand in a second what her significance is, he was able to branch out to Africa and India, even according to most, because basically from the Red Sea, you basically have a connection to India, right? If you pass, Yemen, which is exactly where Sheba is, right? So he can branch out to all of Asia. And so basically that is the empire that he established, that he was able to do trade across this entire region, right? From me, instead of Hodu Mad, right? Hodu Mad Kush, it's the opposite, me Kush Mad Hodu. And that's also the significance of the Queen of Sheba, that according to archaeologists, what we do know about Shva, right? The empire of Sheba, or not empire, it wasn't empire, like the country, was they were famous for two things, both in Tanach and also historically. One, they were a crucial artery in the trade route. And that's really the tie that binds Israel and Shva, is that if you think about it, and by the way, Tzor, all of these three little countries are the corridor for the trade route between the oceans, right? Between the Mediterranean and, right, the Indian Ocean, etc., etc. That if you want to conquer, let's say you're Egyptian and you want to conquer Asia, you have to pass through Israel. You are, Babylonian and you want to conquer Egypt, you have to pass through Israel. And all these different countries of Tzor, Sidon, whatever, Israel, they are all on the trade route. And I'm going to post on Facebook the map that I prepared as a slide. I just don't want to take the time and possibly knock off our connection with the share screen. Let me just spend 2 seconds. You know what? Let me do this. 2 seconds. Where is it? Share screen, please, God. Where is it? It's supposed to be here, but it's not.
It's the green button.
I see that, but I want to open up a specific slide. Oof, oof, oof. Hold on. One second. Green button. Why am I not seeing the green button? What are you guys seeing? You see a map? No, right? No map. Oh, you saw the map?
Yeah, we saw it.
Okay. Should I even try to open it again? Hold on. Hold on, hold on. Okay. Okay, okay, okay. Do we have a map? Yay! Okay. So basically, you guys see my arrow? Yeah? So here where it says Aden, this is Sheba, right? So here's Saudi Arabia, Egypt. So this is the Sinai Desert, Israel. So basically, here's the trade route. This is the Red Sea, right? Yam Suf. Look how it opens up. So here's, right, Hodu, Kush, right under Egypt. So basically, you guys wanted to know where Ophir was. Oh, there is a theory that Ophir is near Madagascar. It's somewhere here. But basically, Sheba's over here. So we see that this is the trade route right here. So you guys asked the question, what did she come to ask him for? So one of the greatest from scholars who was an academic, but also a man of faith, was Professor Amos Chacham, that he wrote, like again, co-edited with a whole team, the Dat Mikra set on Tanach, which is one of the only sets that like really beautifully bridges academia and faith, where they basically literally brought Rashi and they brought Midrashim and Gemarot and everything, but in the same breath. Well, what does archaeology say? And they bring you all the artifacts on the same page. So it's Perek Pasuk, literally like a multi-volume set on all of Tanakh that, you know, is indispensable for any Tanakh teacher. So Professor Chacham researched this, and he said basically, what is the riddle that she was asking Shlomo? When you're part of a trade route, what is your number one danger?
People like cutting off and saying.
And those people are called? People that want to interrupt your autonomy, you know, on your trade route area.
Pirates?
People that want to get some of the money too, right? Like why should you earn money on being part of the trade route? I'm going to infringe on your monopoly. What are those people called? Bureaucrats. No, I'm thinking of a more like, you know, criminal direction.
Robbers?
Highway robbers, pirates, bandits. What do you need, Shmuley? עוד 10 דקות. אתה יושב בשקט. יאללה. Okay, so yes, she was plagued by highway robbers and bandits and pirates. So she's saying, what do I do about them to secure my nation, like to secure, you know? So that was one thing that the queen, so one thing that Sheba was famous for was its cushy position on the trade route, that everybody that wanted to do international trade needed to pass through and get permission, bureaucratic permission through Sheba. You know, just like border control, taxes, right? That's why, by the way, throughout all of Sefer Melachim, we're also going to see Israel is always going to be caught in the crossfire whenever any country wants to expand and branch out, build an empire. Israel's always going to be caught in the crossfire because, again, it's that corridor bridging Africa, Europe, Asia, right? And so anybody that wants to do international trade is reliant upon this corridor called Israel, which, by the way, is relevant to this day. So with the Queen of Sheba, that's one thing she's famous for. The other thing that she's famous for, or the country is famous for, not specifically her, is luxuries. And throughout all of Tanakh, and Professor Chacham shows us, he brings all the psukim where Sheba is mentioned in Tanakh. It's always mentioned in the context of luxuries, because that area is known for plentiful gold. And so they were the main exporters of spices and trinkets that were luxurious trinkets, jewelry, etc. And so basically that's part of what she's bringing to Shlomo is this. And so it's showing that he doesn't, because it's no longer a battle for survival. So the country is so affluent that, yes, they are now interested in luxuries. So basically with the Queen of Sheba, part of her role is she's basically showing how powerful Shlomo is, that now she wants to establish ties with him, and she's actually turning to him for advice, saying, what do I do to secure my power over my country and my trade route? And second of all, she's coming to him with luxuries, saying, I'm offering this to you. And so we can only imagine how insane it was living in Israel then, where, as it said, silver and gold are just no big deal, but that people are literally living with their, forget just wearing Old Navy, Tommy Hilfiger, that's it. Everybody's just, upgrading. And so we'll see already in the next chapter, what effect that had on the people. Was it common for a woman to not autonomously approach another king and be this powerful figure? Well, it depends. If that country had a precedent for a female leader, right? Certain countries did have female leaders. For example, ancient Egypt. if I'm not mistaken, where you have to run. Okay, so you can watch the end on YouTube. Ancient Egypt had Queen Hatshepsut, that she lived basically 100 years after Yetzias Mitzrayim approximately. So that's going pretty way back. So yeah, she easily, would reach out to a foreign king because she's freaking Pharaoh. And again, we had other thing about Cleopatra, the meetings that she had with Julius Caesar, Mark Antony. Okay, forget the whole romantic liaison thing there, right? But just strictly politically. I mean, she obviously didn't start off as Julius Caesar's lover. Started off just as Rome talking to Egypt. And so there are other examples where they did have female leaders, political leaders, and yes, then absolutely she had the authority to reach out to another king saying, okay, let's establish economic ties, political ties, whatever it is. So basically, what she's coming to him for is asking for help politically. And then you guys all pointed out, but she pours her heart out to him. Like she said to him everything that was in her heart. So it's interesting. The question is, does it mean heart, or is it the Jewish way of saying mind? Because if you recall, we spoke about this, that the human understanding of where the intellect resides wasn't always here. In fact, until recently, we didn't assume it was here. Is this ringing a bell? Do you guys remember when we spoke about that ancient Egypt was the most established for the longest time, like understanding of where thoughts came from, and it's from the liver. And then later, other cultures came and said, no, that's not true. It's in the heart. And the Jewish people were one of the first nations to say it's in the heart. And of course, then I geeked out on y'all and spoke about how in Korea to this day, right, like they believe that consciousness is in the heart. And they don't have two different words for the mind and the heart, that everything is in the heart. Like the heart is like the catch-all word for thinking, feeling, consciousness, that's it. Like if you like something, it entered your heart. If like, you're thinking something, it's in your heart, not here. Anyway, so basically, now where do our sages get all of this innuendo from? Because there's so many midrashim that, are suggesting that something romantic came of this. And obviously they have enough to pick up on because as so many of you pointed out, there's an intimate feeling to the discussion. So, but it's nothing like terribly overt, but still. So is it that they're assuming that if there's any interaction between a man and a woman, obviously something has to come from it? I don't know. One of the things, I think it was Professor Chacham that suggested it, that he said that there's a midrash, a very established midrash in Masechet Baba Batra that says, and again, you'll recognize this from the Nusach, whoever says the Queen of Sheba was a woman is merely mistaken. What does this remind you of? This Nusach? Is it ringing a bell? Because it's a formula that I've quoted several times that it appears. Whoever says so-and-so sinned is merely mistaken. Now is it ringing a bell?
Didn't the same thing come up when it was talking about like David sinning with Bathsheba?
Yes! Masechet Shabbat, exactly. 4 pages of Gemara that talk about whoever says Reuven sinned is merely mistaken. Kol ha'omer Reuven chatay lo to'eh. And then it goes on to the sons of Eli, the sons of Shmuel, David, Shlomo. But then in a different Masechet it says, whoever says that the Queen of Sheba was a woman, really mistaken. And they go and explain that really it's the empire. And they're trying to like defuse all of the landmine that they feel that the whole story is sitting on. Professor Chacham suggests that it might be perhaps because so many Gentile nations, and he says it turns out that there's more than one, the Jews, or not necessarily the Jews, but there was a nation in Cochin, in India, that also claimed to be the descendants of the union of Shlomo and the Queen of Sheba. All these Gentile nations started popping up and saying, we're the offspring of that union. So where they even got this from, I don't know. And so basically he suggested that maybe the sages put that in to take away like their claims, saying, oh, please, give me a break. Like, she wasn't even a woman. It was a king who was a ruler over a land, and nothing happened there. And don't go telling us that you have royal blood in your veins from Solomon and whatever. But one of the midrashim that totally baffled me, and I'm going to leave you with this, and I'm sorry I used up so much time, ranting about archaeology and giving you that background, because it did eat up a lot of time and it didn't cover as much as I wanted to on this unit. But basically, the midrash that when I started digging, looking for midrashim on the Queen of Sheba to like sort of flesh it out, like who is she? What is she? Why is there all this mythology about her? One midrash that recurred in many different sources, both Kabbalistic and midrashic, and across all the centuries, was that Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon that destroyed the first temple, Shlomo's temple, our sages are pretty convinced that he's a descendant of the union of the Queen of Sheba and Shlomo. So that's really interesting. Why? What are they doing there? So they are going against the Gemara that is literally cited in the name of the same sage that says the Gemara in Shabbos, that Stephanie, that you said about David and Shlomo. Rabbi Yonatan says in the name of Rabbi Shmuel Bar Nachman, whoever said that the Queen of Sheba is a woman is merely mistaken. Consistent, so it's the same author, same nusach, right? Same wording, except different masechet. So our sages must be disregarding that. And they say, yes, they really did unite and they produced offspring, but then there's one page that says it was only daughters, but Nebuchadnezzar is the descendant. Now, why? Why did they just feel a need to go there? What do you guys think? No, definitely not. I want you to think.
Is it kind of like to provide a dichotomy, like kind of like you said with, like in Judaism, there is a lot of like things that kind of toe the line between like good and bad.
Okay.
So here it's like David is a king, but also from him came this like seed of evil that destroyed the temple.
Well, wait a second. Is he a seed of evil? I don't think he's a seed of evil because at least Yirmiyahu Hanavi, Tzugis and Stephanie, Hashem tells Yirmiyahu to call Nebuchadnezzar Avdi, my servant. Who else is called Avdi in Tanach?
Sorry, called a what?
Avdi, my servant.
Oh.
Who? Who is it, Shmuley? Who else is called Avdi? Yeah, who's called Avdi? No, Yaakov is called in Tehillim Avdi. Who?
לא בזה, עם אברהם, עם העבדים,
יכול להיות.
עם העבד של אברהם.
But I was thinking more Moshe Avdi, right? When Hashem is like, chewing out Miriam. No, זה משהו אחר. Yeah, that's something else. So Bekitzer, so Moshe Rabbeinu is Avdi. Nebuchadnezzar, no more and no less, is called Avdi. Hashem says, yes, he's doing my bidding. I'm sending him to destroy the first temple. So he's doing my bidding. He's my servant. The heck? So basically, I think where the sages are going with this, they're having a hard time understanding how could a mere mortal have the power to destroy the temple that Shlomo, as a tzaddik, built. So they're saying he has a kernel of merit. Because our sages also believe that there's a thing called karma. I mean, they don't use that word, obviously, but that basically nothing happens in a vacuum. Everything always has some kind of connection. So it's saying because he was a descendant of Shlomo, he derived his life force and his ability to destroy the temple from that connection. He's not just some goy, no, he has yichus. And I think it's also, there's a very tacit criticism of Shlomo branching out. So we will have to look back at the connection with Queen of Sheba because literally, I think what the sages are reading into all of that innuendo is literally from the first pasuk of Perek Yud Aleph. And also next time we'll connect why does the prayer end the way it does, right? The first 9 psukim of Perek Tet. And then it launches into this. It seems to be so contrasting, like Shlomo's prayer, the Nevuah, politics? Like, what's the flow here? So that will tie up next time because it flows flawlessly into Perek Yud Aleph. And I didn't send the Gemara homework because I realized it would be better after you guys read Perek Yud Aleph to do that Gemara. So next time, again, in 2 weeks, not next Sunday, I'll see you guys in 2 weeks after Sheva Brachot is finished and everything's done. And then, yeah, so I'll send you a bucket load of homework because you guys have 2 weeks to do it. Okay? Thanks, Tal. All right. Take care, you guys.
Enjoy the wedding. That's the
Amen. And I'll send you guys the link so you guys can also enjoy. And we'll like dance. We'll go like this. We'll hold hands and we'll like, dance together.
Thank you.